The world has entered a time of unprecedented darkness. The rise of a new global government has led to the implementation of a universal identification mark, without which no one can buy, sell, or even receive basic services like schooling. Christians who refuse the mark find themselves hunted and cut off from society. As chaos spreads, a group of 50 believers gathers in a remote hideout to seek refuge and pray for survival. The community, consisting of families, young children, and elderly people, is led by Samuel, a former businessman turned spiritual leader. Their camp is hidden in a dense forest, where they live in makeshift tents, and resources are growing scarce. The adults take turns keeping watch while the children are taught secretly. Hunger and fear loom as food supplies dwindle, and murmurs arise from those who doubt if faith alone will sustain them. Within the camp is an old woman named Mama Adwo, whose small garden plot has become a symbol of hope. Unlike the rest of the land, which remains parched and barren, Mama Adwo's garden mysteriously flourishes. She tends to her small patch with care, and each morning green shoots rise from the ground, and vegetables ripen, providing sustenance to the community. The people see it as a miracle, but even this blessing is not enough to silence the doubts. Among the camp is a young man named Michael, whose sister Leah is gravely ill. The weight of responsibility burdens him as he watches her suffer. He hears stories of people who took the mark, gaining access to food, medicine, and education. Desperation overtakes him, and Michael sneaks out one night, seeking out a city where the marked live freely. He takes the mark, believing it is the only way to save Leah. Upon returning to the camp in secret, he smuggles in medicine for Leah, but to his horror, she only grows worse. That night, soldiers storm the camp after tracking Michael's movements. The authorities capture Michael and several others, taking them away to a facility where those without the mark are imprisoned and reprogrammed. Despite the danger, Mrs. Addo, a former school teacher, continues to teach the children in the camp. Each day, she takes them into a concealed underground room, where they learn by the light of oil lamps. The children study math, history, and Bible lessons, using smuggled books. 9-year-old Emma and 10-year-old Joshua, both curious and full of questions, find themselves struggling with the constant temptation to join their former friends who have taken the mark and now live seemingly easier lives. Emma's best friend, Grace, who had taken the mark, tries to persuade her to join the system. Grace tells Emma about the new schools, filled with modern equipment, games, and luxuries. Emma feels torn. The allure of a normal life weighs heavily on her, but she recalls the miracle of Mama Adwo's garden, and the lessons Mrs. Addo taught on enduring trials. In tears, Emma tells her parents, who encourage her to stay firm in faith, and focus on the things that last forever. The tension escalates when a gang of bounty hunters infiltrates the camp at night. They kidnap several children, including Emma and Joshua, with plans to sell them to the authorities for a reward. The children are bound and transported in a locked van. Terrified, they pray silently, fearing for their lives. As the van speeds down a deserted highway, a sudden blinding light envelops the road ahead. The vehicle screeches to a halt, swerving uncontrollably. The captors, disoriented and blinded by the light, abandon the van and flee into the wilderness. When the light fades, the children are left alone in the van, unharmed. Joshua manages to kick open the door, and the children escape back into the forest, finding their way home. They are welcomed back to the camp with tears of joy and praise, as the community believes they have witnessed divine intervention. As the tribulation deepens, hunger becomes an even greater threat. The river near the camp has dried up, and attempts to grow food on the cracked earth have failed. Yet, Mama Adwo's garden continues to thrive. The vegetables seem to grow overnight, and flowers bloom despite the harsh conditions. She shares her harvest with everyone, though she insists she is merely a steward of God's blessing. One day, a few members of the camp decide to plant their own gardens, hoping to replicate Mama Adwo's success. But despite their best efforts, nothing grows. The earth remains barren, save for Mama Adwo's plot, which continues to yield enough to feed everyone. The people ask Mama Adwo, how her garden flourishes when all other attempts fail. She replies, "I water these plants with prayer, it is God who brings the increase." Her words strengthen the faith of many, renewing their hope. As the underground community continued to thrive and worship, strange occurrences began to unfold that no one could explain. It started with subtle things, flickering lights in the tunnels and mysterious footprints near the entrances. The elders dismissed it as paranoia or tricks of the mind, but young Joshua couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The believers, weary from their journey, finally reached a plateau high in the mountains. It was a desolate place, yet as they set foot on the rocky terrain, they felt a peculiar sense of peace. Elam led the group to a sheltered cave, instructing them to rest, but even as they settled in, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that they were being guided here for a purpose beyond mere survival. That night, as the camp lay asleep, Emma had a vivid dream. In it, she saw a blazing light coming from the heavens. The light formed a narrow path leading to a massive scroll buried within the heart of the mountain. She heard a voice, powerful and full of authority, saying, "Blessed are they who endure, for in this place, the seal of the prophecy shall be broken, and the faithful shall be prepared for what is to come." She awoke with a start, feeling the weight of the dream upon her heart. When she shared it with Elam, he nodded gravely. "The time is near," he said. "The prophecy you speak of is ancient, foretold by the prophets of old. We must seek out this scroll, for it holds the key to enduring the tribulation." Elam gathered a small group to search for the hidden scroll. They trekked deeper into the mountains, following the narrow path Emma had seen in her vision. Along the way, they encountered signs from scripture etched into the stones. "He that endures to the end shall be saved." Matthew 24:13. And, "For then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world." Matthew 24:21. It was as though the scriptures themselves were guiding them. After days of searching, they found a secluded cave hidden behind a cascading waterfall. Within its depths lay an ancient altar, and upon it rested the scroll, sealed with 7 wax seals. Elam took it carefully into his hands, and as he touched it, the seals began to glow, one by one. Elam opened the scroll and broke the first seal. As he did, the ground trembled, and a voice like thunder echoed through the cave. "Come and see." The air thickened, and a vision appeared before them. They saw a rider on a white horse, holding a bow and wearing a crown, and he went forth conquering, and to conquer. Revelation 6:2. The vision revealed that in the coming days, there would be a false peace, one that would deceive many and lead them astray. Elam turned to the group, his voice steady. "This is only the beginning. The seals must be opened, and the faithful prepared for the trials ahead. But remember, our victory does not lie in escaping suffering, but in standing firm, even unto death." As they returned to the camp, they found that Mama Adwo's garden had spread across the rocky plateau, bearing fruit in abundance. It was a miracle, for nothing had ever grown in that barren place before. Elam recognized it as a sign of God's provision, just as the manna had been for the Israelites in the wilderness. Exodus 16:15. The believers took heart, knowing that the Lord was with them. But with the garden's miraculous growth came a new challenge. Word of the garden reached nearby villages, and soon, people began to arrive, some seeking help, others driven by greed. The believers welcomed those in need, but tensions arose as the newcomers brought stories of betrayal, violence, and the rise of a sinister figure, known as the one who commands the beasts. Rumors spread about a leader who claimed divine authority and performed great signs and wonders. He was said to have the power to call down fire from heaven and to control the human-machine hybrids, whom he called his beasts. Those who followed him received a mark on their foreheads or right hands, without which they could neither buy nor sell. Revelation 13:16-17. Elam warned the camp, "Beware of the signs and wonders performed in darkness, for many false prophets will arise and deceive many." Matthew 24:24. He reminded them that scripture foretold of this beast, who would seek to mimic the power of Christ and deceive even the elect if possible. As the days passed, the believers faced increasing pressure to take the mark. Schools refused to admit children without it, and even basic necessities like food and medicine were denied. Some among the camp were tempted, and a few slipped away in the night to join those who had submitted to the beast's authority. Families were torn apart, and the underground sanctuary that once felt like a refuge now felt like a prison. Emma's faith was tested like never before as she saw her childhood friends take the mark to return to school, while she struggled with her studies in secret. She often prayed for strength, repeating the words of Paul, "We are troubled on every side, yet not distressed. We are perplexed, but not in despair." 2 Corinthians 4:8. One night, a group of armed men approached the garden, demanding that the believers hand over their supplies or face severe punishment. Elam stood before them and spoke with the authority of a prophet, "You come to take what is not yours. But this provision comes from the Almighty, and he shall not let it be stolen. Turn back, or face his wrath." As he spoke, a bolt of lightning split the sky, striking a nearby tree, and sending the men fleeing in terror. Returning to the cave, Elam broke the second seal, and another vision appeared, a rider on a red horse, with power to take peace from the earth, so that men would slay one another. And there was given unto him a great sword. Revelation 6:4. The vision faded, but its message was clear. Violence and war were coming, and they would soon reach the believers. The camp braced itself for the inevitable conflicts, preparing to defend not only their lives but their faith. Elam reminded them that though we walk in the flesh, we do not war after the flesh. For the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty through God to the pulling down of strongholds. 2 Corinthians 10:3. The camp had grown to include believers from many tribes and nations, as word of the miraculous garden and the opening of the seals spread. One evening, as the group gathered for prayer, a strange light appeared at the mountain's edge. It was not the cold, mechanical glow of the human-machine hybrids, but a warm, radiant light that filled the night with peace. As they approached, they found an old well, long dried up, now overflowing with fresh water. It was as if God had opened a fountain in the wilderness, just as he had done for Hagar and Ishmael in the desert. Genesis 21:19. The believers knelt and drank deeply, feeling their spirits lifted as they praised God for his continued provision. As the believers gather at the newly discovered well, a stranger arrives at the camp, bearing a peculiar message and an ancient artifact. Elam senses that the breaking of the third seal will bring challenges beyond what they have faced before. The stranger speaks of famine, scarcity, and a hidden secret that lies within the scroll, a secret that could change the fate of humanity during the tribulation. Will the believers find the strength to endure, or will the trials of the third rider break their resolve? The prophecy unfolds, but the true test of faith has only just begun. As the believers rush into the hidden cavern, the air around them becomes cold and damp. The darkness is thick, almost suffocating, but the faint glow from the remnants of the scroll still lights their way. Deep within the cavern, they find what appears to be an ancient underground sanctuary, carved from the rock. It bears inscriptions of Hebrew, Greek, and symbols from various ancient cultures, a sign that others have used this place as a refuge during times of tribulation throughout history. The child, still clutching the woman's hand, looks up at her with frightened eyes and asks, "Will they find us here?" She kneels down, her voice soft but steady. "Fear not, little one. The Lord is our hiding place and shield. He will cover us under his wings." Her words offer comfort, yet the sounds from outside, the whirring of machinery, and the heavy march of boots, grow louder, reminding everyone that danger is closing in. Suddenly, a rumble reverberates through the cavern, causing dust and debris to fall from the ceiling. The group realizes that the forces outside have found their location and are attempting to breach the sanctuary. As panic begins to spread, one of the older men, who had been a pastor before the tribulation, speaks up. "We must not lose heart." The word says, "When the enemy comes in like a flood, the Spirit of the Lord will lift up a standard against him." We need to seek the Lord's guidance for our next step. As the pastor speaks, The remnants of the scroll begin to glow once more. The ashes lift off the ground and form into a new symbol in mid-air, the seal of the Lion of Judah. The believers gasp as a sudden rush of wind fills the cavern, and from the shadows emerges a majestic figure dressed in shining white robes, holding a staff. His face radiates a holy light that dispels the darkness. He raises his staff, and with a voice like thunder, declares, "Do not be afraid, I have come to strengthen you for the battle ahead." The figure, who appears to be an angel, touches the ground with his staff and water begins to flow from a crack in the rock, providing the group with refreshment. He then instructs them, "You must go deeper into the sanctuary, for there you will find an ancient altar. Kneel before it and pray, and the Lord will show you a way out. But beware, many will be tempted to forsake the path of righteousness for the allure of false peace and comfort." With this warning, the angel vanishes, and the group quickly moves further into the depths of the cavern, following the flow of the newly formed stream. The path grows narrower and colder, but a faint light can be seen at the end of the tunnel. As they approach the ancient altar, they find it covered in dust and moss, with an inscription that reads, "He who endures to the end shall be saved." The believers kneel around the altar and begin to pray earnestly, asking for God's deliverance. As they pray, the cavern walls start to glow, and a vision unfolds before them, showing the fate of those who have already succumbed to the rule of the Antichrist. Cities lay in ruins, marked with the sign of the beast. People wander the streets, either bearing the mark or hunted for refusing it. It becomes clear that the world outside is descending further into chaos. At that moment, a hidden passage opens beside the altar, revealing a narrow stairway carved into the rock, leading upward. The pastor takes the lead and the group begins to ascend. Just as they are about to reach the top, the sound of approaching soldiers echoes through the passageway. The child looks back in fear, and the woman pulls him closer. "Keep moving, don't look back," she urges. The stairway leads to an exit that opens onto a high cliff, overlooking a barren landscape. As the group emerges, they see the advancing army below. Among them are humanoid robots, with red, glowing eyes, and in their midst, rides the Antichrist himself, leading the charge. The believers have no choice but to descend the cliffside and continue fleeing, clinging to the hope that the Lord will guide their steps. In the distance, the sun begins to rise, casting a crimson glow over the land, a stark reminder that the battle is far from over. The next step in their journey will demand even greater courage, for they will soon face trials that go beyond mere physical endurance, testing their very souls. The journey through the rugged wilderness is exhausting, and supplies are running low. The group of believers presses on, driven by faith and the memories of the angel's promise, yet they know that the forces of darkness are relentless. The constant tension of being hunted wears on them, and doubts begin to creep in. They pray for strength and guidance, knowing that any moment could bring a confrontation. Their fears become reality when, one night, just before dawn, they are ambushed. Soldiers, robots, and drones surround the group, their red eyes glowing ominously in the dim light. The believers are quickly overpowered, bound, and led away to a fortified encampment in a barren valley, a place where those who refuse the mark of the beast are brought for processing. As they arrive at the encampment, they see rows of metal cages filled with other captives. Screams of agony and cries for mercy fill the air, mixed with the mechanical hum of machinery. The captives are separated into lines, one for those willing to take the mark, another for those who resist, and a third for executions. The group is forced into the line for those who resist. As they are herded forward, they pass a platform where a man kneels before a tribunal of soldiers and a high-ranking officer who is clearly marked with the sign of the beast. The officer's voice is cold and devoid of emotion. "You have a choice. Take the mark and live, or reject it and face execution. We offer you a quick death by electrocution, or a slow, painful one. Choose now." The man lifts his head and says, "I will never bow to the beast. Jesus Christ is Lord." The officer nods to the guards, who drag the man toward a large metal chair with electrical restraints. A lever is pulled, and electricity courses through his body, ending his life. The believers in line watch in horror, their faith tested by the brutal reality of the situation. As they move closer to the platform, some among the group begin to waver. One young woman, trembling with fear, whispers, "Maybe we should just take the mark. We could still worship God in secret." Her older brother, standing beside her, grips her hand tightly. "No, we must not compromise. Remember what the angel showed us. This world is passing away, but God's kingdom is forever." When the woman with the scroll steps onto the platform, she is offered the same choice. The officer, who seems to recognize something different about her, smirks as he speaks. "I sense power in you. Why waste it? Take the mark, and I promise you'll be given a place of authority under the New World Order." She replies with a calm yet resolute voice, "My allegiance belongs to the King of Kings, not the Prince of this world." Her refusal echoes through the camp, stirring the faith of the other captives. One by one, the believers are given the choice. Some choose death, remaining faithful to the end. Others, unable to bear the fear of suffering, give in and receive the mark. As they do, a dark cloud seems to settle over them, and the glow in their eyes fades to emptiness. Among those who stand firm is a young boy, no older than 12, who bravely declares, "I belong to Jesus." The soldiers drag him toward the electric chair, but just as they are about to activate the switch, a flash of blinding light fills the sky, causing the machinery to short-circuit. The boy is left unharmed, his bonds miraculously loosed. The chaos that follows is swift. The encampment is thrown into disarray as alarms blare and soldiers scramble to regain control. Amid the confusion, the believers seize the opportunity to escape, fleeing toward the nearby hills. However, not all are able to make it out. Many of their brothers and sisters remain behind, choosing to face death rather than surrender their faith. As they run, the woman with the scroll looks back at the encampment and sees the Antichrist himself now standing on the platform, his eyes fixed on her. He raises his hand, and with a voice that seems to pierce through the very air, he declares, "I will hunt you down, no matter where you hide. The end is near, and your God cannot save you." Yet, even in the midst of these threats, a deep sense of peace fills her heart. She knows that the tribulation has a purpose, and that the trials will ultimately refine the faithful. The group, though smaller than before, presses on toward the mountains, where a prophecy speaks of a place prepared for them, a place where they will be nourished for a time and times, and half a time.
I hear the call within the fight.